Hello, ladies and gentlemen. I'm Krishna C. Nadella, and this is State of Mind. Today we're kicking off a three-part series entitled Welcome to the Real World. As we kick off Season 2 of State of Mind, students all across America are settling into campus life and the school year that lays ahead of them. For many, they will have high hopes of grades, internships, and eventually full-time jobs waiting for them upon graduation. With that said, during their time on campus, they will grow personally and professionally with the hope that they will be ready for whatever life throws at them when they leave the hallowed halls of academia. With that in mind, the first 5 to 10 years after college can be the most important in setting up a young graduate's life both personally and professionally. With us here today to help provide their perspectives on navigating life after college are the following guests. Annie Wiseman is the Director of Training and Workforce Development at the Institute for Family Health, a federally qualified health center network with a dual mission to provide primary health care services and train primary care health professionals at all levels. She holds a Master's of Public Health from St. Louis University. John Colborne is Director of Skills for America's Future, an employer-led workforce development initiative of the Aspen Institute. He holds a bachelor's degree in government and economics from Oberlin College and an MBA from the Wharton School at the University of Pennsylvania. And finally, Rishi Chopra is a program coordinator for the Wadhwani Foundation's Race to a Job program in the U.S. He holds multiple degrees from Santa Clara University and San Jose State University. Annie, John, Rishi, thank you so much for joining me today.
Great to be here.
Thank you.
So I'd like to start with a very open-ended question, and somewhat rhetorical, but I'd like to get your thoughts. And Rishi, this starts with you. How does the real world differ from college life?
Sure, well, that's a great question, Krishna. Well, I believe that, we plan certain things and we, develop our traditional career pathways thinking that things will just work out if we do what we're supposed to. And then, unfortunately, I think when we graduate, then reality starts to kick in. The economy might not be what we were expecting, the job market might not be what we were expecting, or even if the economy and the job market are what we were expecting, the job itself might not be what we were expecting. And that's when we start to realize, I need to have my plan B and my plan C. And sometimes I just need to reinvent myself. Perhaps this career wasn't the right one for me, or perhaps I need to take some time and go back to school. So I believe that there's a lot of things that occur once we actually enter the job market, and then we kind of have to calibrate and see where we are and adjust our strategy accordingly. And which is why I think community colleges are so great, is because I think they give us opportunity to do that, to really kind of evaluate, well, what are all my options? How can I not get nervous and not, think that, I've spent all this time and money and now I'm doing something I don't even enjoy, and realize that it's fine because there are a lot of options out there. And that's where I think programs like the one we work with at BMCC and other colleges can be really advantageous to students.
And we're going to talk about that program in a later episode of this series. But John, I noticed you're nodding your head. Your thoughts on this?
Yeah, I think for a long time there really was this sense of a big division between the college experience and the work experience. In fact, college was sort of walled off and sort of held sacrosanct from real life. But I think more and more as people are graduating from college and finding job markets challenging, or finding that the skills that they got in college weren't the skills that employers were looking for, that there's now really a move to try and think about how we blur some of those distinctions and really think about how do you incorporate internships and work experience and bring people from industry and bring employers on campus so that there is more of an opportunity for folks to be exposed to the world of work while they're in college. And I should say, certainly I think the research shows that when students are taking advantage of those sorts of opportunities, they're much more likely to be employed on graduation, they're much more likely to get higher wage jobs, they're much more likely to get to graduation. And so I think colleges and universities and students are learning that there's real value to starting to blur those distinctions.
Annie, talk to me about that difference between theoretical and practical that I'm starting to hear from Rishi and John.
Yeah, I mean, I sort of view the college world as sort of the first step towards the real world, but it's still a little bit sheltered. It's that first step towards full independence, but you've still got lots of folks, professors and counselors and all kinds of people around you supporting you, almost sort of, training wheels. And so how do you, to speak to John's point about, some of the internships and job opportunities that you can take advantage of while you're in school to help you sort of understand what it's going to be like when you take those training wheels off, and how so it's not as big of a shock and you're more prepared. Because I do think that you know, it's important to prepare yourself as much as possible so that you're ready, and the real world isn't a scary thing, but it's sort of exciting. So you're ready to come out and sort of experience and learn about yourself.
So I'd like to develop just a little bit more on that thought process. Talk to me about the preparation that college does provide, to the extent that it doesn't have to be exact, you know, skill sets, but what is the basic essence of what it's preparing you for?
Yeah, I mean, I think full independence, really, and taking ownership of your life. I think before that, many people are fortunate to have parents and family members and friends, and that are sort of helping them along the way more. And as you go through college, I think you start to, even from your freshman year of college to your senior year, you really see a big difference in people, and they really start to sort of come into their own, learn about themselves, figure out what degree they want to get if they weren't decided coming in, start to make some of those decisions for themselves, which I think is really important. And you know, and I think that, you know, even some of the internship choices that you can make, and some of the things that you're doing, the jobs that you have while you're in school, the elective courses that you're taking, you're really starting to find yourself.
John, I notice you agreeing with Annie. What I'm not hearing from you guys is really the actual textbook material. Is that really just more of a support system for the real preparation of, you know, real life? Could you talk to that?
So, you know, when we talk to employers about what they're looking for in college graduates or people coming out of college, I think we hear over and over again an interest in sort of the workplace readiness, or sometimes soft skills, showing up on time, being able to work in a team, being able to communicate with colleagues and with peers. I think also, though, that when we talk to employers, you know, there is an expectation that there's some basic foundation of knowledge, and whether that's in math or in communications, writing, reading, comprehension. And then as you get to technical expertise, we know we actually spend quite a bit of time really focusing on how do you build the right technical course delivery structures that gets at the knowledge and abilities that employers are looking for. But I would say, by and large, when we talk to employers, it's really these foundational skills that they're looking for, and it's this workplace readiness. They assume that some level of the technical skills they can sort of help train and direct folks once they're hired.
Elaborate a little bit more on these soft skills that you refer to. I think sometimes it gets a bad rap, and you know, so he's very salesy, he's very friendly. But you know, what do we mean by soft skills?
Yeah. So you know, when I think about soft skills, I think about somebody who is able to be productive day one on the job, that they can show up on time, that they know how to comport themselves in teams, know how to work with a boss, sometimes even a difficult boss, that they have the ability to use judgment in problem solving, know what problems they can solve for themselves and what problems they're going to need help with. And you know, I think colleges teach that, or schools can teach that when they are modeling those kinds of activities in the classroom. So showing up on time, that means showing up on time to class too. Being able to work in teams, you can do a lot of teamwork in classrooms.
Rishi, just continuing on that point about the preparation that college provides, is it fair to say it's actually an environment where one grows up?
You know, I believe so, and I think that's why it's incumbent upon the college, like Annie and John were saying, to really provide a lot of real-world experiences and connections with the employers. Fortunately, a lot of the colleges that we work with at the foundation do provide a lot of these internship opportunities and get the student outside of the kind of just closed environment of the college, if you will.
Sure.
So it's just really crucial to take it upon yourself as a student to realize that beyond just the textbook learning, beyond learning the content, which is extremely important, I also need to make sure that I get a sense of how it would be to actually be working in this job, right? And that's why I think sometimes it's good to go step by step too. Before you dive into something head first and say, I want to get a 4-year bachelor's degree or I want to get a master's degree, maybe go step by step. That's why community colleges are such big advocates of stackable credentials, where you go in and you get a 9-month certificate. You get some real-world work experience, and you really see whether this is something that's for you at the end of the day. You know, and I think you put in a little investment, you get a sense of what it's like, and then when you realize that this is the right career for me, then you take that next step. And I think that's the beauty of a lot of the programs that exist in community colleges that students can benefit from.
All right, so let's turn the tables here. What can't college prepare a student for? What should a student not count college to, you know, provide them? I think there's a lot of expectations that college will provide, and college can be very expensive. But what's unrealistic from a student standpoint to expect from the college experience? Rishi, I'll start
Well, I
with you.
think one is just the instability and the you know, not being able to predict what will happen in your life, right? I mean, that's the big rude awakening, if you will, when people go outside of school, is that, you know, I might get fired, or, you know, I might have a boss that I don't like. I might have people that I work with that are extremely difficult to get along with.
Right.
So how do I deal with all this? You know, in college, it's like, you know, you get a set schedule, you have your midterms and your finals, and it's much more like, you know what's going to happen, right? It's predictable, it's consistent.
Right.
Unfortunately, the real world is not like that. So if we can provide opportunities for students to realize that in college and learn how to deal with those kinds of things, I think it will go a long, long way. And you know, that's why a lot of these soft skills that we're talking about come into the picture here. Because you have to learn to deal with different personalities, deal with different situations, and not get nervous and not allow yourself to get angered or give up too quickly, and to learn how to deal with some patience and composure and thinking with the long term in mind. And that's why I think these soft skills are so important, and employers keep on repeating over and over again when you go to conferences or events. I was just at the BMCC Workforce Summit just yesterday, in fact. And this is something that the Union Square Hospitality Group HR director was telling the audience, is that, you know, over and over again, we have to teach our new employees how to deal with difficult situations and difficult people and unpredictable situations.
So, John, talk to me about difficult situations, because those are, those are situations that even after college, many of us are not equipped to deal with.
Not ready for it. Yeah, exactly. You know, I think I think they're all over the place. I think we've all had, probably all of us on this panel have had jobs that we've taken and then wondered, oops, did I take the wrong job, or am I working for the right person? Or sometimes the job tells you, or your boss tells you, you're not the right person in that job. And so I think one thing that's part of that soft skills package is something we call grit or resilience. It's the ability to sort of persevere when there are challenges or problems, whether those are challenges that you've made yourself and have to try and fix, or challenges that happen to you, like the Great Recession or the economy. And I think again, our research shows that people that have this grit or this resilience will have significantly better outcomes in life. And I think for a time there was a belief that you were that was an innate, either you had it or you didn't have it. And what we've learned more and more is that in fact it can be taught. That there are pedagogies and ways that colleges and parents and others can impart this idea of grit or resilience.
So let's think about emotional intelligence. And is that the same thing as what you're referring to, or is that two very different things?
It's all probably part of the same coin. That would be my sense. But my sense is, so certainly emotional intelligence, the ability to sort of read somebody and understand, sort of be empathetic to their concerns and issues, to be able to understand, when you're pushing a point that isn't working, and being able to redirect or retact. All of that, I think, is part of the emotional intelligence rubric. But when you think about, when I think about grit or resilience, what I think I'm thinking about is the ability to recover from a setback or a challenge and sort of redirect and go in a different direction.
Got it. Annie, I'll let you speak in a second, but just to add to that point, I'd love to get your thoughts. We talk about grit, we're talking about the ability to recover. How much does self-awareness play into that?
Absolutely, and I was just going to sort of build on what John was saying about that sort of self-awareness to sort of be willing to stand up and speak to what you know, but then also sort of understand your limits and be willing to ask for help. So understanding your own boundaries, I guess, is really important, and particularly in healthcare, in my field, more and more we're asking people to work on teams, and in some situations we have brand new graduates out of BMCC or elsewhere that are working, that are medical assistants, for example, and they're working right next to a physician who's been in practice for 20, 30 years. So we're asking them to be able to have the confidence and the self-awareness and be empowered to sort of speak up and talk about a patient's care, for example, but then also understand the limits and scope of their particular credentials. And so I think that's very important. Also, it just sort of comes with the skill of observation and being able to really sort of pay attention to the little nuanced things. And I think those are the things that in a job interview will do very well for you. And I think going forward, even in positions, that's often what people really can kind of appreciate, employers really appreciate. So I think, and I think it is also something that will help you in personal life as well. You know, so I think it's sort of around a whole skill that will serve you well.
So we live in an age now where technology is so readily available, and information's even available before it's made in print now through other mediums. How are the graduates of 2015 different from years past? Rishi, John, Annie, you all work for very established organizations. You probably have young individuals coming out of college every year. Rishi, I'll start with you. How do they differ from maybe when you first got out of college and were interacting with your own colleagues?
Well, I think for one thing is young people today have access to information instantly, right?
Yeah.
And so even before they go into the classroom, they probably have learned about what they're going to be taught in advance and from different sources, right? So they might be questioning the professor now or the teacher and might be wondering, well, you're saying this, but then I heard this from this other news source or this other website,
Sure.
so why should I believe you? And who should I trust? And which I think is a really good thing, right? At the end of the day, it's really good to have multiple viewpoints and perspectives and not think that everything your school is telling you is the be-all, end-all, and that this is your world. So I think in that way, I think technology is makes a very positive impact for students today as opposed to maybe 10 years ago. Like when I was in high school, I didn't have access to instant information before going into the classroom. So I think professors should keep that in mind and use that to their advantage, and then encourage students to interact with the class more. And so, one thing people complain about technology is that, well, it closes people off, right? People are always on their smartphones. I think instructors need to figure out, well, how do we use technology to our advantage? Now that the students are armed with all this knowledge, we should challenge them in the classroom and say, well, this is what I said, but what do you think based on this news story that just came out the other day? This just happened yesterday. What do you think? And so I think that we just need to encourage our students more to use technology to their advantage. So it should be looked at as a positive impact, in my opinion.
John, your thoughts?
Yeah, I think we're seeing faculty do this in the form of flipped classrooms and so on, where the expectation is that there's sort of knowledge out there, that the knowledge doesn't reside just in the professor or the instructor, but in fact it really needs to be something that's sort of leveraged from multiple sources. And so I think when you're doing that, I think we have the ability to do that now in a way that when you and I were at school, certainly when I was in school, we did not have the same sort of tools or capabilities. And the only caution I would have there is that, Google does not make you an expert. Experience makes you an expert. Listening to others makes you an expert. Doing something over and over again and sort of looking at that's what makes you an expert. And so I think it's important we don't confuse the ability to seek information with the ability to be an expert or to be even capable or competent in a particular task. And I think that's where the instructor, where work experience and internships and life experience and to work on the job, that's what really starts building up one's capabilities.
So I'd like to elaborate on that because without getting too controversial or challenging the millennial generation, is there a sense that there's not a respect for what's already been established because the information's already been handed to them versus it being earned?
So, I don't know if I would go that far. I think what I see among millennials, younger people who work with me, work for me, or work in our programs, is that there's a lot more skepticism and skepticism about institutions, whether that's schools or employers or what have you. And I think what they have seen, and I can't fault this because I think they're seeing something that's right, is that institutions have less commitment to them, and so they're less likely to make a commitment to them, to the institution. I think when somebody takes a job with an employer, maybe when I graduated from school, there was some expectation that the employer was going to nurture them and grow them, and on the other side that there would be some loyalty from the staff to do that. And we just know that the life cycle of business is that they're constantly churning their employees, that there's likely to be layoffs, and I think the millennial generation has responded with a sense of, well, if you're not going to make a big commitment to me, I'm not going to make a big commitment to you.
Annie, I see you're nodding your head.
Yeah, I mean, I think the deal has changed a little bit. The agreement has changed, and people aren't going into the workforce thinking that they're going to find a company right after graduation and stay with it for, 20, 30 years and retire from there. There aren't the same pension programs in place that there used to be. So I think some of that skepticism is healthy to a certain extent, to just sort of make sure that what you're putting into something you're also getting out, and I think that's completely fair. I also think on a personal level for folks coming out of school now, as opposed to maybe when we were immediately coming out, is this sort of maintaining a good and professional presence online and making sure there's a good balance of how much you're sharing, knowing that a potential
LinkedIn,
employer could be
Facebook,
Googling you.
Twitter,
Absolutely.
right.
Yeah.
All the social media platforms that you're on and you're expressing yourself through are fantastic, but just always sort of knowing that anything that you put out there, not only your friends and family can see, but then people, potential employers, maybe even programs that you're applying to for school down the road. So I think there are a lot of sort of different and complex issues that exist today around all of these different topics that weren't there when we immediately came.
It really talks to that self-awareness we had mentioned earlier
Totally.
about really owning your brand, owning your image, because that's what you're presenting to the world, and it's so easy to give that control to other people.
Absolutely.
So help me understand. I'd love to hear from all three of you. If you were to mentor, and I'm sure you guys all are part of some sort of mentoring with students that are currently in the academic environment, what type of roadmap, what type of mental roadmap should they put in place as they're about to graduate from college? If you could help them and provide a bit of insight as to, what are the things that they should watch out for or look out for? Start with you, Annie.
Yeah, I mean, I think definitely one of the first sort of cautions is to make sure that whatever you're putting out there, like we just said, is what you want to put out there, no matter where you are in your stage of life. Because just because you're saying certain things or you are who you are now doesn't mean that's who you'll be 5 or 10 years from now. So you want to make sure that you understand that all of that sort of follows you. And then I think as far as a roadmap, for me, I think it needs to be, you need to have a plan, but be willing to deviate at different points. And so you definitely need to have a structure in place, have a game plan, have a roadmap, but then understand that as you change and grow, it's going to change and grow. But then keep it and keep updating it and keep revisiting it. So often the folks that I work with in the professional sense, we will set a goal in place, and then every few months, every 6 months, every year for sure, just pull that back out and look at it. Is it still working? Is it working? Is this professional goal still aligned with your personal goals? And making sure that you're factoring all of those things in. I think oftentimes we set professional goals, we have all that in place, but we don't factor in the fact that things will happen and change outside of our professional worlds. So I think that's probably the best thing, is sort of that allow yourself some flexibility, but definitely have a game plan, because without that, I think you can flounder, which I know I did immediately coming out of school for a while. Sort of, I had so many interests that I couldn't narrow it down, which is in some ways a good problem to have. But yeah, so I think having it but being willing to deviate is the most important.
I'm glad you brought up the personal aspect, because we don't really spend that much time thinking about that when we start our careers. John, as you present your mental checklist, so to speak, incorporate that into it.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, so just building off of that and kind of referring back to Rishi's comment about trying things and testing out, I think there's a huge value to, if you're interested in a particular area, see if you can do an informational interview with a company in that area or a leader in that area. Test it out a little bit. Try it on and see if you like it. Do an internship if you can find one. Take a part-time job somewhere. To the extent that you can sort of try things and see if it fits with your personality, with your inclinations. I love this story about somebody who wants to go into nursing, and then they realize, I don't like the sight of blood. Yeah, right? And so...
But I'm already halfway
and I'm already
through,
halfway
yeah.
through. Wow, I probably wasted a little bit of time there. And so I think there's a huge opportunity, when you're in college, to really try things on. And I think if there's a mistake that sometimes folks make in college, is they treat college like it's television. Like you're just going to sit back and watch something, and then when the show's over, then you can sort of go out. My own sense is that you need to be much more active about it. You need to be talking to professors, talking to employers, getting involved in service learning opportunities, getting involved in extracurricular activities, taking part-time jobs. All of that, I think, starts to inform the college experience and can ground you then in sort of where you're likely to take that going forward.
Got it. And Rishi?
Yeah, well, I think it's very important to strike a balance and be creative once you graduate, right? So oftentimes students either go to the track of where I want to do something that's practical, that will satisfy my parents and impress my parents or my friends, and will be socially acceptable, if you will. That's one track that we see. Right? Another track is, well, forget all of that. I want to do something that will make me happy. I want to do something I love, that I'm passionate about. And I both make sense in their own ways, but I think it's important to have kind of a happy middle ground if you can, and realize that I want to do something that I love, but at the same time I have to be practical, right? I have to pay the bills, I have to pay the rent. So how do I get creative and do something that's kind of middle of the road approach? And I'll give you an example. I had a friend who got into Harvard Medical School, and her parents were extremely thrilled, and like, this is perfect, like, this is always what we wanted for you. And then she ended up not going, and she rejected it, and her parents were shocked, and they were like, well, how can you not go to Harvard Medical School, And then what she told them was, well, I have a passion for public policy. I want to make a difference in people's lives. At the same time, I have a passion for healthcare research. So now what she's doing is she's getting her master's in public policy and hospital administration, or her MPA. And so this is something that she wasn't expecting, and her whole life she was just studying to become a doctor. But then when she got to the point, and when she was so close, she realized, well, this is something that I have to readjust and think about, and come up with some kind of a middle ground. So I would say that in your life, it's just important to step back for a moment and think about it, give it some serious thought. And that's why, again, I'll reiterate, it's good to take smaller steps sometimes and give it some thought before you just jump into something at first.
On that note, I'd love to hear your own personal story of how you got to the Wadhwani Foundation, which I'd love to hear a little bit more about as well.
Sure, absolutely. Well, just like every other young person, I also thought that I'll become a lawyer or a doctor, engineer, one of those three. So sure enough, I entered undergrad Santa Clara University a long time ago. And took my biology courses, organic chemistry courses, thought that this is the thing for me. And then I did enjoy taking the courses. I enjoyed the content and learning and all of that. But I just began to realize more and more that just practicing medicine would not be the thing for me. I couldn't see myself in a hospital 5 days a week. And some people love that. Some people get a high off that. I have an uncle who's an ER physician, and he absolutely loves it. He won't even leave the ER. So. But then for me, I realized I also was more interested in public policy, in making a difference in the community. So I made a few friends who were elected officials in the Bay Area back in the day. So I ended up working on a state assembly campaign in California, which was totally unexpected. I would never thought in a million years that I'd be doing this when I was in high school. But from that, I learned so much. I learned what it takes to run for political office. All the sacrifices you have to make from your personal life. It was such an eye-opening experience to me, and that made me realize I never wanted to run for political office. So again, I one thing off the list, and what I know I didn't want to do, but at the same time, it was a wonderful learning opportunity for me, because it made me realize what it takes to do these certain kinds of jobs. With respect to the Wadhwani Foundation, this is something that came out of just my love for meeting people and learning about what they do. So I had helped put together this conference called In Diaspora in upstate New York with this gentleman named M.R. Rangaswamy. He still does it actually every year. So during that conference, one of the speakers was Dr. Ramesh Wadhwani, and he is a Silicon Valley entrepreneur, has a really amazing and inspiring life story himself. And so that's where I just met him for the first time, got to know his life story, his mission behind the foundation, which I won't get into now, I'll get into later. But that really inspired me, and I thought about, well, I've never really, worked in philanthropy before, never really worked for a nonprofit. Maybe this would be kind of cool to try this out and see really, they talk about what impact they make, but let me really kind of get a sense for what is the real impact they make and how do you make that impact. So this was kind of another opportunity that I just kind of unexpected again. Just when I worked for that state assembly campaign, I never thought I'd be working for a nonprofit or philanthropy. And it's been an absolutely amazing experience over the last few years. I've just really gotten to know, and this is why I'm so passionate when I talk about the community college programs that I've been exposed to, and the deans and administrators such as Dean Sunil Gupta here at BMCC that really kind of inspire me, because I see every day what they do to help students and advise them and to put them on the right path, if you will.
Well, I think that's just the type of stories we need to hear more of. And John, Annie, Rishi, thank you so much helping us understand that as we're on the road to loving what we do, we'll be doing what we love as well. On that note, that's going to wrap up our show for today. If you like what you saw in today's episode, please subscribe to our YouTube channel. In addition, if you have any questions or comments for the show, feel free to reach out to me via email or Twitter. And for those of you that would like to keep up with the ongoings of State of Mind, please check out our website at www.bmcc.cuny.edu/stateofmind. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much for your time. And remember, every life is a book. Make yours a bestseller. Have a good night.